Today we are making carrot cake, and this carrot cake is super moist and delicious. You won't even know that you're eating carrots. So you want to start by preheating your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you want to grease and flour two 9-inch springform pans. I greased it first with butter. You could use a cooking spray, and then you put in a piece of parchment that you cut out, and then you grease the top of the parchment as well, and then you sprinkle some flour, and then make sure that you shake out the excess. Do it over your sink. You can tap it to get out the excess flour because you don't want it on your cake. The next step is to take 4 eggs and you add sugar, and the recipe calls for 2 cups, but I'm going to use 1.5 cups, and I have done it with 1 cup and I find that it's just fine. So if you want to cut down on the sugar, you absolutely can. And I'm going to beat this with a hand mixer until it gets creamy, and then I'll show you the next step. So I've beaten my sugar with my eggs, and now I'm going to add 1.5 cups of oil. The recipe calls for corn oil, but if you don't want to use corn oil, feel free to use either canola or vegetable oil. Just don't use olive oil because it's a little too strong flavored. And now you're slowly going to drizzle it into your egg mixture while mixing it with your hand mixer or stand mixer. Just do it slowly until it's all incorporated. Okay, so what you want to do next is sift 2 cups of white all-purpose flour. And I have a fine mesh strainer here over a big bowl, and you're going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, a pinch of salt, and about 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. You can certainly go heavier if you like. And the pinch of salt, if you don't know what a pinch is, maybe 1/4 teaspoon. And then you just sift it through, and then I'll show you the next step. So now that I've sifted my flour with the other ingredients, all you have to do is add it to your egg mixture here and kind of fold it in, stir it in, don't worry about it, mix it all in, and then I'll show you the next step. Once you have your flour stirred in, you can add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract and stir that in, and then you're going to add, I have 4 cups, which is about 2 pounds of finely grated carrots. Thrown in my carrots, and I'm also going to add 1/2 cup of chopped walnuts, and I like to toast them on a skillet, just a dry roast very quickly. You want to take them off a little bit before you think they're done because they're going to keep cooking from the heat that they retain in their oils, so take them off before you think they're ready and let them cool. And I'm also going to add 1/2 cup of raisins. If your raisins are a little dry, you can soak them in some hot water, or today I decided to try to soak them in a little rum. So I just put them in a saucepan and heated up the rum and let them stand there for a little bit, and then you drain them and you use them in your recipe. So now I'm going to stir this in, and I'll show you the next step. So the batter is ready, and I just want to add that you can absolutely skip the nuts and the raisins if you don't like them, or if you're allergic, or I just want to say that my kids don't eat raisins in any other shape or form, but they do eat them in this cake. And the nuts, I just want to give you a tip. Store your nuts in your freezer so that they don't go rancid. Now I'm going to take the batter and divide it evenly between my 2 pans, and I'm going to put them in the oven. So they're ready to go into the oven. You're going to bake them for about 35 to 40 minutes until the tops spring back, and if you stick a toothpick into the center, it comes out clean. So the cakes are ready, and I took them out of the oven, and you see how my finger doesn't fall through when I push on here? And I'm going to let them cool a little bit in the pan, and then I'm going to remove them from the pan and put them on the cake rack here to cool completely before I frost them. So while your cakes cool, you can make your frosting, and I have 2 packages, 2 8-ounce packages of cream cheese, which is 1 pound total, and 1/2 pound, 2 sticks of unsalted softened butter. Everything is room temperature and soft. And you're going to beat this, and then you're going to add 4 cups of confectioner's sugar and 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and you're just going to beat that all together until you get a nice frosting. Now I doubled my frosting, double what the recipe calls for, because I don't like to worry about whether I'm going to have enough to just frost the cake. I like to go a little heavy-handed. It is dessert after all, but you probably could get away with half of this recipe. So 1 package of cream cheese, 1 stick of butter, 2 cups sugar, 1 teaspoon vanilla if you're doing that. Here's our frosting once all the ingredients are combined. Okay, so now that the cakes are completely cool, I'm going to frost them. You don't want to do it while the cake is warm because your frosting will melt. So make sure that your cakes are completely cooled. And you can either use a spatula or a butter knife, I'll put the frosting on the first layer over here, and then I'll put the second layer on top, and then I'll show you. Okay, so I frosted the top of my first layer, and I have some of it coming down on the sides here, if you can see. That's fine, and that's actually good because I'm going to use it to frost the sides of the cake after I've done the second layer. Okay guys, so pardon me, I'm not really a baker, so I frosted the cake and now I'm going to put it in the fridge to set, and then once I take it out, you can use a warm knife to maybe even moisten it a little bit to smooth out these little rough edges to make it look a little bit neater, and then I'll show you the final steps. I also forgot to mention, your cake is going to have one rounded side and one flatter side. The flatter side is going to be on the bottom of your cake pan, and usually I like to frost the bottom side of the cake, I'm sorry, the flatter one, so your cake looks nicer. But if you want your cake mounded, then you would frost the top part. I just want to show you guys that I used about 3/4 of the frosting. I definitely needed more than one recipe's worth, so maybe you could do a recipe and a half. It's up to you. Okay, what I have here is a piece of marzipan that I dyed with red and yellow food coloring to make orange. And I'm going to rip off a little piece. And this is the fun part. You can have your kids help you. And you can make these as big or as small as you want. And I'm just going to roll it into a little carrot shape. It's basically a cylinder that you make narrower on one end. And if at any point you find that your marzipan is sticking to your hands, you can use a little powdered sugar. And then you take a knife and you make these little lines. And then I have another piece of green marzipan. And you're just going to take a little circle and put it on the top. And there you have it. Okay guys, so this is as smooth as it's going to get for me, I think. You just take your butter knife or your spatula and run it under hot water and try to smooth it out. And now I'm going to take some green sugar crystals and sprinkle on the top. This is totally optional, it's up to you. You can use that green coconut that they sell during Easter if you want. So I'm just going to sprinkle it over the top here. And then you're going to place your little marzipan carrots around the edges, like so, if you want. And this is it. I hope you enjoy.